They are asking what the role of Figueira in the current moment is, and in the moments of greater proportion catastrophes. And in critical moments, how will this work of rescue take place? The role of Figueira is different from the task of the planetary centers and operation bases in those moments, as we will see. When it's about events that have to do with the water, the sea, rain, and the wind, the works of rescue will be led by Anutea, which is a planetary center which has a system of mirrors that will lead the work when it's about this. And Anutea will form a group with Irbin, which is in Argentina in the etheric plane, and with the Bermuda Triangle, but about the earth movements and the fire element, a nuclear catastrophe, one of these possibilities. The process, when it's about the earth and fire, it would be led by Irbin directly. And this would all be kept and led by solar hierarchies and not by planetary ones. And in those moments, there are 3 planetary centers which will work together, or which are already working together in the eternal present: Anutea, Mirnajad, and X. And these centers, in those moments, they will stimulate the spiritual progress of those beings and take care of the their spiritual balance. So Anutea has a practical role with the Bermuda Triangle and Irbin, and has a spiritual role at the same time, which is to stimulate those beings from the inner point of view. In those moments, Anutea also has one more role, but with Aurora and Liz Fatima, which would be to impede that involutionary forces, contrary forces, penetrate not only the operation as well as the beings that are being rescued. So Anutea in those moments has a triple work: a practical work with the Bermuda Triangle and Irbin, a spiritual work with Mirnajad and X, and this work of exorcism, this work of fight with the contrary forces, the involutionary forces that could want to impede the operation at that moment. And Anutea works with Aurora and Liz Fatima in this last one. And distancing those forces, it is possible that solar and positive forces could get there. But also in those moments, there is the work of a base of operations, which we know as Niskalkat. That base is on the first level of the etheric and physical plane. It's not a physical base. It will welcome a big amount of those beings, the beings that will be removed from the catastrophe locations, and the work of Niskalkat and its vessels would be to remove those beings, their subtle bodies, their inner bodies, and forward them to the etheric areas of that base where they would be harmonized, healed, treated if there had been some trauma or some event. It's up to this base, after treating those bodies, after healing them and reorganizing them, to forward them to intraterrestrial cities where they will be while the situation on the surface is not re-established, or if they will remain in other areas of space. Niskalkat will be in charge of this work. So Figueira does not participate in this directly. It works on the preparation of people's state. It works on the inner preparation of people by elevating the consciousness of these people that through destiny, by karma or their own choice, they will go through these experiences in a plane or another one, because these things do not take place only with those who are incarnated, but also those who are disincarnated. So Figueira does not act directly on this, like the bases and planetary centers act as it has been described. Figueira works on preparing the consciousnesses of people, or preparing people's vibrations, their bodies, their souls for these events. But not only for these events, right? By preparing, the consciousness will be elevated and it will be introduced in the broader conjuncture of comprehension of things. So if that individual has to go through these experiences of being rescued, removed, even with their subtle bodies, their conjuncture will be flexible, will be prepared to adapt on many levels of consciousness, or if they are transferred into a different, so their consciousness will be prepared. So Figueira's work on this field doesn't have the goal of taking care of the current situation of the individual. Figueira's work would be to prepare them for these moments, prepare them for this life or process, which includes a superphysical process as well. So in Figueira's work, it's about giving people the key to transcend their evolutionary things, so that subtle bodies can work in different patterns of development and different patterns of life. For Figueira's aura, or even the physical part of Figueira, the beings are led to it, the beings who have enough elements to develop those other patterns. For Figueira's aura or Figueira's contacts, destiny or the plan does not forward people who are not susceptible to these changes, to this kind of change. And within Figueira's work, a change is included to welcome the new genetic code, and therefore welcome the new patterns of life which will be implanted on Earth. So Figueira is not only working about these moments. It's not working only about expanding consciousness and adapt the subtle bodies and inner bodies for these moments, but also it works the consciousnesses of beings on a future life, for a future Earth and a future humanity. These facts are practically unknown by most, and the majority does not think about these things and sees Figueira, if they can see Figueira or get here, as many other things. Each one sees what they can. Each one sees what they are able to see. But this side, which is not explicit, which is not exposed, because it's very rare for us to talk about this topic of rescue, the rescue of beings. It's when a question comes, because there's a lot of information published about this. So this is a work that talks about Figueira, but which is very internal. It's on the plane of consciousness, and therefore it's not very known. Here in Figueira, we would have the task of maintaining an energy present to enable this work of making people aware on how they can adapt and mold according to emergency situations. We even have a sector called Immediate Response Group, which is to train people on the physical plane for emergency situations. And as we're not used to these emergency situations in the physical plane, we're mostly focused on the other planes. I don't know if we are prepared enough and aware enough about living certain unforeseen situations and of being very naturally, with a lot of naturality, in the face of certain needs, in the face of certain situations. But the first trials that we'll go through will demonstrate if we are prepared for this or if we are not. And about Figueira's work, Figueira's practical work, we don't have a restriction time for this, because we don't know what will be the destiny of each one. So it's better for us to work on the consciousness, because this is for everyone, than for us to train people on some restriction diet, because we don't know if everyone will go through it, or if everyone needs this training. But although we don't have a restriction diet or restriction, we should be careful about things, have gratitude about the things that we have, the things we receive, the things that we use, especially gratitude, and a lot of and be very, and use things properly, a conscious use of things. So we prepare for critical moments, working on our consciousnesses, and eventually not even talking much about it, not even talking about it. And this work is very connected to the energy of several interterrestrial centers, and this work connects us, make us what in the book of Niskalkat is called this islands of salvation. So in a certain sense, Figueira, in the plane of consciousness, in the work of consciousness, and even in the physical plane, would be an island of salvation. But this does not mean that it is a place where people will take refuge from dangers, because we know it very well that it would be useless for us to take refuge, because things are set and the general destiny of each one is also defined. And a person asked up to what point that destiny is defined, because if destiny is defined, why do we need to take care of so many things? What is defined is the individual's destiny in the main things. If the individual will awaken, for instance, in their cycle, or if they will only awaken in the next one, this is something that is defined. So a soul, if they will awaken now in the current cycle, that is defined way before the individual incarnated. Or if the soul wouldn't awaken now, that is also defined. So these are important things, things which are defined, even in a very firm way. It's everything that will have to take place to that individual about their future cosmic evolution. So that which will be our cosmic trajectory, everything that will lead there is defined. We don't even know what is defined, because this is a very profound plan of ours. It's a very general plan, but details and superficial things and human things, all these things are defined up to a certain point. And a part of these definitions is up to the being itself. Decisions that they will make, choices that will define certain things which are not the general thing, but important and very basic things for their life, the life of groups, and even planetary life. So things that are about our eternal life, our cosmic life, our higher life, that is all defined. But under that, there is a whole level of and structure of life, cycles of life, which will depend on our actions, free will, and so many other things. And this atmosphere that we are seeking to preserve here in Figueira and work on, which is not the creation of a normal and common environment, a common environment of people. We are seeking to create a different structure of life. And this structure of life, which we are seeking to create here and develop here, is about certain laws which will act on the physical plane and will be very important in these critical moments, and will be very important for the development of people's consciousnesses in certain moments. For instance, the materialization, and this materialization of things, this is very important in a moment of catastrophe, and this does not usually take place, but we can work certain laws in faith, and we can have certain works in our consciences that enable in certain critical moments or moments of consciousness of people for them to have dematerialized obstacles, for example, or materialized help. We say this, that we work on the materialization and dematerialization For these moments, we can say this because the existence of the physical Figueira itself is a miracle of materialization, because there is no earthly, material and consistent fact that may explain this materialization. So materialization of this spiritual center itself counts on this energy of the law of materialization. It's just that we don't materialize objects, people, as it can happen. The center itself was materialized miraculously. You know that here we don't have money, and there's a lot of expenses that I don't even know how much it is. It's all here, and nothing is lacking. This is the law of materialization, you see, here in the physical plane. So when we need more space, when we need a house, the house will be built. This is the law of materialization, working through human beings, through individuals who are all working on this consciousness. And this law of materialization is so important in the critical moments, and so important for us to enter the new stage of the earth, because imagine a planet like this, sick, full of people, which must be a new planet, a new earth with a new humanity. You see how this law of manifestation, materialization should work here, and how this law of dematerialization should also work here, because we need to dematerialize certain mental structures that are very strong, and certain economical, social, and material structures which are practically indestructible. So we need to dematerialize all of this and also materialize, so that in a planet like this there could be things of a sacred planet, which will be this one. So we work on these laws about this through the consciousness. But this law worked like this in the consciousness. It opens the path so that in material moments in which we need materialization, imagine that in the middle of a catastrophe, the movement of the elements. So this is worked here like this, not by magic, but in the consciousness. With this, all the elements that are contaminating and deadly can be controlled. The action can be soothed, can be deviated. So this is all the work of Figueira. This is not a material work, a physical work. It's not the work of rescue in that meaning that we said when we were talking about Anutea, the Bermuda Triangle, and etc. But it's a work united to that one, but done in a different way. And than before, because it's a work that began in the consciousness many decades ago, and at a certain point it was represented in this materialization of Figueira through the work of consciousness that takes place here. This consciousness and work is not restricted to the physical area of Figueira, because as it is a work of consciousness, it's in the subtle planes, the inner planes, as in our mind and mental plane. This is taking place, that mental will expand. And any being connected to that, and any being that may have the need of developing this, only by thinking about this or connecting telepathically with that will receive that. In the astral plane, it's the same thing. That's why we're all invited to not nourish our emotions, our personal and individual emotions, because otherwise that will contaminate the general astral plane, the general emotional plane, and that consciousness won't be able to work on that general astral plane. So Figueira has a mental plane where this should be organized and clear to be found by any mind that may communicate through telepathy, and the astral should also be organized so that any astral body that may be in contact with the astral of Figueira may not find the movements, the astral movements of the individuals, but find an emotional environment that is more stable, of a certain quality and certain elevation. And we contribute so that this may take place, working on these topics of connection with higher levels. And the process that we use for this is for not work directly on our own emotions, because this is endless. This is the work of psychology. We are invited to place our feeling, our emotion, and our mind on the most elevated plane possible, and thus it will be worked, because in this conjuncture with everything that is included in this work, and a lot of energy of Minajad is included, which is an interterrestrial center which is directly connected to all this. So this is the process of life here, and this is the process of work here. And the person asked, what are the most important tests for us at this moment? Well, every time that we identify with some state of consciousness, a trial comes. Something happens to liberate us from that identification, so we can even identify with something very positive. If we are very identified with whatever it is, a test will come to liberate us from that identification. But why do I need to liberate myself from something positive? You need to liberate from that positive thing so that you can find something even more positive. So the trial always comes for your progress, even when it's a test within a situation that you can't understand very well. For instance, you can be in a very well-balanced situation. If you are in a balanced evolutionary situation, if you're stable there, it's the time for a trial to come. It's time for you to get out of there and get to a more advanced situation. And this is not very well understood at the time of the test. And for me this was so evolutionary, it was all good, but they can't see that they were attached to it. They were growing, but they were attaching to it. So either that is positive or not, it needs to end because they won't go forward. So trial comes even when things are good, because otherwise you won't make any progress. So the trial is always something that comes to help us. But trials come from in all ways, in everything, and we must have a relation to these trials that is very loving, understandable. When it comes, we shouldn't make resistance break with that impulse, because that impulse will come. That could break you in the physical plane as well. That could break with something, because you didn't accept the trial. Sometimes it seems like we have accepted the trial, but we haven't. So it's necessary to be very careful about this, to be very attentive, because anything that comes to break something that you used to admire, that you considered a lot, anything that comes to break a balance like this, and sometimes to place you in an uncomfortable situation because you're not used to that broken. You're not used to being unbalanced on that. You're not used to being without reference. So that becomes a fixed point. So a trial must come for you to leave that point and find other patterns, other ways of relating to those things that are life. But these trials of personality are all impulses that help us to align the bodies. So if there is a body of ours that is not well aligned with the other two, some lack of union between these bodies, then trials come to unite those bodies. If we observe this carefully, we will see that the trial always comes to align the personality. And when the alignment of the personality starts to take place, because mental trials come to adjust the mental, because they're having some hardship to accept it, or emotional trials, so that the astral body is turned more to that which comes from the superior mind. So an emotional body could go through very hard tests, very specific trials, for them to break that state and allow oneself to be worked on intuitive energies that will collaborate so that our emotional body is more connected to our intuition. So these things must be broken. And the physical goes through reflections of these trials taking place in the emotional woman too. So these trials of alignment of personality, they must be seen also outside of that body, because if you're feeling some pain, there could be a system of rupture of any stagnation even in cells. You must see that in the collection of your being, and not to locate that trial only in the physical and treat it only in the physical, because if it took place in the physical plane, you can be sure that it began in some other body, it didn't begin in the physical, either in the mind or emotional body. So you must see the collection of these bodies, the collection of your personality, and thus you will accept that physical trial with much more. Even if it's an emotional trial, you must immediately look at the state of your mental body, what happened between your mental body and emotional body, so they received the trial in your emotional body. Anyway, you should study this topic, because these trials, although they take place in one only body, they include all of the personality. And when we are training more at a physical level, emotional level, and we start to include those trials in our progress, our personality's progress, then trials begin which are different from absorption of consciousness and soul, so that your personality can be absorbed, can manifest that which the soul brings, what the soul lives. There are souls for this personality, moments of breaking the routine of that personality and ego, and this happens all the time. Unexpected things in a situation or a relationship, unexpected things about facts linked to us, which come to break a certain state of balance for that material consciousness to be absorbed into a greater consciousness and change. But in daily life, we go through trials which are not only physical to break the system, but we also go through a lot of trials, and we'll see how proud we are when the trial comes, when something happens and you see how proud you are. If you haven't seen it enough, another trial will come in that same field to see if you can. So you will have trials on pride, one after the other, until you consider that a work to be done within you, because the soul does a part, but it does not do everything. They fulfill their part in the consciousnesses and everything, but there's a practical work, the work of an individual, of personality, which must take place there. Another trial that we're always receiving is a trial in the field of laziness. And you can recognize this because you see, we were so good and suddenly this happened so that I could move. So this trial comes in this field for you to learn that you can use your legs to walk, you can use your own arms to grab something you need. Otherwise you won't notice that you are becoming lazy and comfortable in certain physical limitations. So you need proof for you to be shaken, for you to find out that you can do certain physical movements. You don't need so many people to help you physically, because a good part of that you were supposed to do a big part of it. So trials come in the right moment, as well as trials in the field of lies, as we don't know things very well. We usually live a lie at a personality level because we don't even know our destiny, and we live something thinking when our destiny is different. So when you are perfectly convinced that your life is that, then the trial will come and say, no, it's a lie, your life is not this. It seems like it is for you, but it is not. So a trial comes to show you that is a lie. Sometimes the trial comes to show you that is not real, but it does not show you what is real. You yourself will have to find it out. And it's good for you to find it because then you see something. Maybe it's not in your measurement. You will find out what's real for you and you will start. And then a new trial will come for you to learn, because we are taking the first steps in the spiritual and evolutionary path. And the trials that we also receive is about the field of being coward and self-defense. We are tested all the time not to be coward, not to be fearful. So trials in this field of cowardice are strong trials, and sometimes we are impelled to do something that we wouldn't do. But that wants to remove us from this line of being cowards, of not doing something because we're afraid of something else. And trials will teach us. When the trial comes and you suffer something, you immediately open to what should be. You will understand the trial and you will love them, because each one that will come will always lead you forward towards something greater. And one of the most important trials the trial of doubts, because for you to allow yourself to be absorbed by the soul, you can't have any doubts on your evolutionary process. You must be totally surrendered. You shouldn't doubt anything. And then the trial of doubt comes. Is this like this? Really like this? Am I capable of doing this? Will this happen to me? This is a mental trial in the field of doubt. If you have doubts about what you are doing, in the middle of the construction path, this is a trial to see if you were really right about what you wanted, to see if you were really right about what you were seeking about your mind. And this trial of doubts is very subtle and accompanies us for a long time after the more basic trials. But this trial of doubt is very meaningful, and we should be prepared to face it. For all of this to become, we need something called fasting, but not material fasting only, but fasting of words, reactions, fasting of thoughts. You must begin fasting on these things, because words are always there, ready to come out of your mouth, always. And most words that come out of our mouths make more disasters than harmony, as you know. The energy that they have, the intention, everything that is. So fasting of words for you to only say what you should say, so you don't have enough time to know what you will say, because the way people talk, you can't even notice what you're saying. I don't know if you notice, people don't even notice what they are saying. So we need to fast here. We need to fast on speaking. We really need to get it as an exercise, as a work, to enter this field of trials in a very soft way, and so that trials will come to us and really do the work that they should. And fasting of feelings too, because feelings create karma is not only by doing things. You also create karma by feeling things. So if you have a feeling, you're creating a karma. You need to fast from feelings to see what kind of feeling you were nourishing, what kind of feeling you are creating. You need fasting. You need to have less feelings to have quality in your feelings, so that when you have a feeling, it should be something of quality and evolutionary. You will enter that fasting wanting this, aspiring a life of quality feelings, because anytime anything that you see, you will remember that you are fasting, so that the feeling that will emerge there is a feeling, a different kind of feeling, more controlled feeling, educated feeling, a more refined feeling. But for this, you must want to have this fasting. We cultivate feelings even for things that vanish from our lives. Isn't that so? How many people have vanished from your lives? How many? More than the ones who are present. From our lives, more people have vanished from our lives than the ones who are in general. And we even nourish feelings for everything that's gone. That feeling is taking the place of something that should be free, for the feeling of the moment to expand. That area should be free. Because of the astral body, the area of feeling is fully taken by feelings for things that which are gone. You won't have space to have greater feelings. You won't have place for your feelings to grow. Some people keep feelings for people who died, without thinking that if they would come back, something completely different and even contrary, because so many things have happened to them and to you. If they would come back, you would have a different feeling. And we have our bodies, a feeling, our astral body, fully busy by retrograde things that is gone. You see how we need fasting. When you realize, because in most cases you don't even realize what you're thinking about, when we realize, you see there's a thought running there, but what is that? How can I think about that? You must stop that. You see, if you noticed, stop it. And how could this take place? Don't let this anarchy of thoughts to dominate your mind, your brain, your personality. We need to fast on this. In spiritual disciplines, there used to be aspirants fasting on food, water, so that they would enter that mechanism of fasting. Instead of having 3 meals a day, you spend a day having 1 meal. It's not that this matters a lot, it's just to prepare you to do it with your feelings, with your thoughts. You see why fasting was used in the physical? Plain because many beings would be saved with fasting. They would fast, enter a different dimension, vibration, liberate from certain things in their bodies, and they would feel lighter. So from this part of feeling, things would take place. But today, with your minds more developed, you can have this work within what you call as a continuous fasting. It's not stopping eating something or stop using something. Use it in an intelligent way. Eating in an intelligent way in the proportion that is necessary at that moment, not more. So you are confronting the rest of humanity in a continuous fasting. You are living that fasting. You are eating from what is necessary and not. So this part of physical fasting was very summarized and balanced, and you in your consciousness use what is necessary, and what is necessary you can let it go. You just give someone else, because most people lack things on the surface of the planet. So everything that you used, 3/4 of humanity may need that. But the emotional and mental plane, it's not as simple for many. But a decision is necessary on this field. It's necessary to decide to do this, and then the energy will help you. The energy will make that happen. Mental fasting comes by rejecting negative thoughts and feelings, and of course that your mind won't stop, but you will reject it and replace by a positive thought, and replace by the thought that you want to think about, the thought that you want to use. This is how fasting begins. You need to be attentive on what starts to arise in your mind. Reject. And as the mind won't stop, and then you replace it, and the work begins. You're feeling something. Observe what you were feeling. But how can I feel that? I don't know anything about that person. I don't know anything about that situation. I don't know the future. I don't know the past. How can I feel something in the face of this? It must be neutral in the face of it. And then the fasting of feeling begins, because then if you reject the feeling that you naturally have, which is to be rejected, you reject it, whatever it is. I don't know anything. How can I feel that? I don't know anything about that. How can I feel it? Reject it. Deny it. If this is done systematically, a different feeling will emerge there. A feeling that did not come on your observation about others, and which did not come by liking others. It's a feeling that emerges and you don't know where it came from. And that feeling is good. you notice it's evolutionary, and it's the result of fasting, of you denying your normal and natural feelings, your common feelings. We can notice when it's a feeling of the personality or the soul that others are, because the feeling of the personality is always defensive, is always justifying themselves, they're always accusing others. You're feeling what you are, projecting on your feeling. Because the same thing could cause different things in different people. It depends on what they have within. Something could irritate someone or cause compassion in another person. So you need to deny that. If you want to place yourself to have some inner feeling, a real feeling, which has not been made by you, it emerges. But fasting of that common feeling is necessary. It doesn't mean that you have no feelings. Of course, it's not that. There's a whole balance. This is a work. But you will be attentive what kind of feeling that is. What is that feeling doing in others? This is the first question. That feeling could be very good for you, but how about others? Each one will understand this up to a certain point and do differently.